Welcome to this tutorial, episode 4 in building an AR app based on an engineering model. This is part 2. We covered the basics of materials in part 1. In part 3 we look at topology, correcting artifacts. In this tutorial we will be creating the materials for the robot. We will be using an add-on called Extreme PBR. I'll show different types of add-ons that you can use as well from the Blender market and one from Polygon. Those are excellent as well, but we'll use Extreme PBR as it uses the same principal node as I showed in the first tutorial. You can follow along even without this add-on, but it uses the same settings. So we'll create the materials. I'll speed up some of them so you can follow along, but I'll create 3-1 extensively. Speed the rest up, and then we can cover all of those aspects. Once we've done that, we need to export everything out to Unity. I'll cover the exporting or baking of the textures out so you can use them in Unity. And we're gonna cover the export of the model and animation as an FBX so we can import those in Unity as well. I'll show you Unity quickly, see what the model looks like, see how the materials are applied. We'll cover the full details in a later tutorial, but at least you get a glance of what we're going for. So that's enough said, let's go ahead. A great resource for Blender add-ons is the Blender market. And let me just zoom in here for a second so you can see the URL. You can reach it at blendermarket.com. And let me just clear this. There is a section materials, shaders and textures. Clicking on it takes us to that page. Well, we got over 106 different pages. Some of them are very generic, some are very dedicated to a special material or subject. For example, this one is about tongue and flesh material node, just the one material. I think this has a very special use case for it. There's a couple of ones that I really like and I would like to show to you. The one we will be using in the tutorial is the Extreme PBR Nexus. It does come at a price, $89. The benefit here is that you can change all the parameters of the material in the viewport, so no need to go to the node editor to make any changes. So that's a great benefit. It has all the aspects we want to deal with, so this will be the one we are using. Another great one with extremely high quality output. If you're looking for high quality materials, highly recommended to use the EV and Cycles Materials system by Chip Walters. This is a very good one to use. Chip Walters in general makes high quality add-ons. And another one that I just want to show to you is not a material database per se. It's called Fluent Materializer. It doesn't come with a library, but it lets you define or actually lets you build up a material from the ground up, but in a more automatic way than the native Blender way. You start using masks, adding on the colors, and you can make everything that you need. It takes a little bit more time, but it's extremely flexible, and I like this one quite a lot. If you want to head over to Ryan King, the one we saw before, because we created his material procedurally. He also offers them in a procedural pack. You can buy those. Also very high quality, but it does require you to go over to the node editor and make all the changes there by the sliders, as we've seen in the previous tutorial. The last one, which also is high quality, is not on the Blender market, but it's on the Polygon website, where we also downloaded the texture. If you scroll down, you see they have plugins available for the different 3D packages, Blender being one of them. And you can download the one here, and that makes the whole process of importing the textures and creating the materials much easier than just downloading it from the website. But that's enough said, let's create some materials. Let's set the model up for texturing, and we want to maintain our flexibility. So as you can see in the image on the screen right now, some parts of the robot are yellow, some are black, and we want to have different parts of the robot have different colors. So the easiest way that we can do it is we are selecting a part, we apply a material, this being white, and let me change this over to rendered view so we can see what we're doing. Suppose I want the top of this motor to be a different color, and I got face select on. Just to show you, you can make the selection right here. You can select either the vertex, the edge, or the face, but I got the face selection on right now. And let me just head back so you get a better view. I can apply, or actually I can create a new material. Let's make this green, for example. I got my selection here and I can say assign, and then this part is green. So if I want another part to be green as well, I can make the selection. Let's just make a full selection here. I can click on assign. I need to select the green one. There you go. So I can make any part of this model to be green. So select the green material, press on assign, and there we go. That sounds easy, but if I want to change something, this can be quite cumbersome, especially when you have a hard to select part like this outer edge here or this whole shield or face. And therefore we can use vertex groups, and we can select a part, define a vertex group, and each time we need it, we just select that vertex group and we can move on. We can add to the vertex group, we can subtract from it, and it gives us a lot of flexibility, especially when we're going to create some difficult materials or complex materials. We can just select the part and drop them on there. Let's add a material using the PBR add-on. Just make sure that your rotation and your scale are set to 0 and 1, otherwise your material may be rotated or scaled incorrectly. And also, for the sake of this tutorial, I'll be using UV. Normally I would use cycles, but it needs to re-render each time I make a change, and UV is just a little bit easier to look at. Then let's change the scene to scene world. Looks a little bit nicer. And now head over to the Extreme PBR add-on, and let me just pull this out a little. There we go. And if we use this pull down menu, you see all the categories which are present for this module. Let's select one. We are going for metal raw, and we are presented with an icon. Clicking on it shows us all the different materials that are available for this module. Let's just select one. Let's take this darker one. So we got the object selected, and as soon as we press on add new, the material is added. There you go. It's also present in the Blender interface. You can see it here on the right hand side. And if you look at the add-on, there are a bunch of options available. Let me just give you a quick rundown. So the options available for resolution are just below the icon. You can go from 0.5K up to 8K, depending on the type of resolution that you need. The higher the resolution, the more processing power, obviously. I'll stick to 1 and 2K for the tutorial. Just below is the material which has been added, same as in the Blender slot. The mapping option gives you the UV Unwrapping, which we're gonna need in a second as well. And the baking is the option to bake out the material that you can use later on in Unity and Unreal. We'll take a look at that after we apply the materials, as we're gonna need it. Then the whole list that we can use to tweak the material is right here. So inside of the square right here are all the options that we have available to change the appearance of the material. And let me just clear this out. So if I want to make this part, and let me just scroll this a little bit up so you can see it. If I want to make it less rough, I just use the slider, and you can see it's more glossy now, and I can move it all the way to the right to have it not so glossy. I can use the bump here to make it more rough, as to say, less bumpy material. And I can change the scale. I'll use that on the next material. That's all the way we can tweak this material, which is in place. And then we can apply effects. And we have two options to apply effects. One is if you want to add something with a paintbrush, you can use the paint module. It's this one. So let me just add it, and I'm gonna make that into a gold material. I'm just gonna add an effect. So I'm gonna add a new module. As you can see, it's added here on the right hand side. There are a couple of paint tools options. I will not go over them, all of them, but you can see if you're interested, you can choose a lot of different brushes and the way they're applied to it. So you can tweak it in a lot of ways. I can paint it. In my case, I need to reproject this first. I have a brush and now I can let me just write something silly on there. So if I want to write, for example, dusk on there, there you go. So I'm painting on top of this material right now. If I'm done, I can press stop and I can admire my work. You can see, great. So you can add a lot of effects and then use the same type of changes inside of this box to make it less metallic and make it more rough and so on. So this is something if you feel artistic or if you want to add something personal to this material, you can use this option. I will not be using it in this tutorial, so I can delete it. So just pressing the minus next to the material will eliminate it. We will be more looking at the FX effect, which is usually scratches and fingerprints and so on. We can also apply some rust on top of a material, and this is what we're going to look at for the next material. Selecting the next object, clicking on the icon. Let's take a new material, for example, this one. Adding it shows the material on top of it. And let me just scroll down. So we got all the options here to change this material. Let's make it more bumpy. So we are just going to add some bumps to it. Like so. But I see that the distribution is not quite all right. So let's change the scale so we can distribute this. And I think a scale of 8 will work fine. So we got it, well, severely beaten. And as you can see, we got a very rough material. What we want to do now is we want to add some scratches to it. So we are going to use the FX layer. First, we're going to select what we want to add as an effect. So from the pull down menu, we are going to select the surface imperfections. Clicking on the icon gives us all these maps which are available. And let's use this one. So we got the scratches double north 2 selected. Add the FX layer. And now the effect is going to be added. And let me just scroll down. So this is a dynamic mask, which means I can change it. It's set to paint mode, which means you can add the effect all over it and then repaint it by eliminating it. We are just going to use the noise texture. So at random, the texture is applied. So scratches are going to be applied at random. They are very hard to see at the moment, but we can change that in a second. To get a better view, let's make this more rough. Like this, so at least we can see what we're doing. We can change the scale, and as you can see, the scratches appear already. They're very severe, so we can change that as well. And we can change the bump distance down here, so we can make them more rough as well. And then we can change the scale of this. And let's have them at, for example, you can see they're moving along and I can position them where I like. So they're very severe at the moment. And what I can do now is I can go up and I can say part of the mask needs to be excluded. So as soon as I move this slider, you can see that some of these scratches disappear. And I can do the same thing on the other end of the spectrum. Like here, I can go down. If I go too far, it gets a negative. So I can change the slider here. Make them less pronounced or more pronounced. There we go. And we added the bump and we added some scratches. And we can add up to 4, I believe, of these effects. But I think we'll stick to the 2. So we got the base material in place. We can do the same thing for the motors, but let's add some rust to it. And then I think we got a lot of the effects covered. So let's take a look. To change the material for the motor, we need to select the motor first. And we have defined this in a Vertex Group already. Let me head over there and let me tap into edit mode. I can select the motor. You can also select it in the viewport if you like, but using Vertex Group is a little bit easier. Let me change to the material tab. And the first thing we want to do is select the material that we like as a base material. So we're going back to metal raw. And we are going to select a material like a darker one. And the only thing we need to do is press add. And as you can see, the material is added in the material slot and it has been applied to our Vertex Group or to the motor directly. I can tap out of edit mode already as it has been applied, and now I can make the changes. The first changes I can make are to the material itself. I'll leave most of it as it is for the moment. Let me just give it a little bit of bump, like so it's a little bit less shiny and more bumpy. And then we can add the effects layer. So first we're gonna select the material that we like as an effect. We don't want a metal raw, we're gonna add some rust to it. Then we need to select the one that we like. This is too much, I think. Let's use this one. So we got the material selected and then we can add this as an effects layer. By default, it goes into paint mode, and paint mode means it's applied all over the object and you gotta use a paintbrush to scrape the effect away. We are just gonna use a noise texture, like so. And this has been applied already, as we can see, and now we can tweak this a little bit. So we are inside of the rusty material. We can increase the bump value, so this one is rough as well. So especially when the light shines on it, that's going to be very rough. I don't like it have this much rust, so I'm going to change the scale and I'm going to bump that up actually to 15, so it's got specks and spots all over it. I think the bump is a little bit too much, so let me just slide this down. And let me also slide it down a little bit on the base material. And there we go. And this is how easy it is to add the effects. So if you want to add a new material, we can head over to the Vertex Group again, tap into edit mode, deselect everything, select the part that we would like to change. And let me see, I got this as a Vertex Group already. Suppose I want to change this into a lighter material, just for contrast. We are going to head over to metal raw. Let's use this one. Add new, and as you can see in the material slot, it's added to this Vertex Group as well, and there you go. And this is how you can quickly add materials to the whole model. We have the material for the motor applied, but what happens when we apply a material with a gradient effect? And this is something that's going to be of interest when the UV unwrapping is incorrect. So just let me show you. I'm gonna head over to my motor. Let me just select the entire motor. Then we're gonna change the material. And right now we are gonna select the worn paint. Let me select one and let's take, for this example, the green one. And we can edit. It's added automatically. And as you can see here, something is off as the material transitions from green to white at this point. Also the circle, which I think is part of a letter like an O, it stops here and it transitions to something that we do not want. So the orientation is incorrect. Then you can head over to the parameters. And for example, I know that 7 will give me a better view. So I'm just going to change it for a second. You see the material is applied, but I'm still facing the same problem that it goes from white to green and the same happens on the top. And this has to do with the way that the model is built up and the UV unwrapping takes place. Just want to show you. Let me just change this back to 1. So we're there. I'm just gonna drag this up. I'm gonna change this to the UV editor. And what I want to do is load in the image, which is the basis for this texture. So I'm just going to press open. These are the old ones. Here you see all the textures which make up this material. So like a normal map and your diffuse map. This is the one we want. Let me just open it. And if I unwrap this motor, so I got it selected now. I'm pressing U and I say Smart UV Project. I see the motor is transitioned as a 2D object on top of the texture. And this is the way it's applied. As we can see on this side, I do see some text already. And that text is actually here on the bottom. Let me show you. This is part of the unwrapping. Next to it, so they form continuous line. But as soon as I take the one to the right, you see it's all the way on the right hand side as well. So let me just select this whole range. And we can see what is happening. So according to the software, the part on the left hand side in the model should be unwrapped in the middle on the bottom. But the one to the right of it should be all the way over to the right. So what we can do is we can grab hold of this, we can grab it, and then we can move it over so it fits together. But as you see, I see an O appearing on the top, so it's even orientated incorrectly. If I rotate this, rotate Y, and I say 180, so it's upside down, now I can match it up. And let me just make it a little bit larger. As you can see, I can match it up here. So they're connected. I'm going down here. And as you see, now it's a better match already. The next one is odd. So what I can do now, I can take the next one, which is this one. I can bring it over here. And let me just show you. If I make this larger again, I can place it next to it. And there we go. Go back. And you see, I'm getting the B, O, and the X almost correct. Now let me get the final part. This one, drag it over here. I can show you that I'm almost perfect. It's a meticulous job. There we go. Go back. So what you see now, and if I go out of edit mode, now you see it has been applied correctly. So now I can read the text. And there is not a sudden transition between the texture and the top. Everything seems to work. But I've done this manually, and this has to do with the way that the model has been presented to us and it has been built up. It's the topology. This is something I will address in the third tutorial as well. The way that the model is UV unwrapped is something for which multiple tutorials are out there as well. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you want to move fast, you have to unfortunately go through the process of rearranging all the islands, as they call them, so they match up. Or you have to do some retopology work to make the model a little bit better, because it's, from a modeling point of view, not the best topology present, so we can optimize it, which makes the UV unwrapping a little bit better. So this is the way you can solve it. Watch the third tutorial on changing the topology as well, because that can help you as well. And we're gonna move on with the materials. With all the materials in place, we are ready to export the model, animation, any material, so we can use them in, for example, Unity. We can use the add-on to bake the materials, but since we have an animation included as well, the add-on does not allow us to export the animation. But let me show you how that works. The materials, and I can open up a tab, are all here for each of the objects. But those cannot be used inside of Unity or Unreal. I need to bake them into the UV maps, and fortunately this can be done using this program. So I'm just selecting one object, but I can select multiple ones. We can do it more quickly, but then let me take this one. I'm going over to the bake section here. A pop-up module appears, and let me go through the settings here. There are a few bake modes, which is BSDF, cycles and combined. We are going to choose the first one, not the cycles, because the cycles does not offer the metallic workflow. So I don't have the metallic workflow here, but with the first one I do. So I got diffuse, metallic, normal and roughness, and those are the 4 ones that I need. So that's fine. I got a PNG output. I'm doing a quite low resolution, which is only 1K. I would go higher, but for the sake of tutorial, I'll keep it at 1K. And I'm doing it over the GPU. These 3 options, I'm just gonna exclude them from the export. If I were to export this as an FBX object, so the model convert to an FBX object, I will lose the animation. It works if you just have an image that you want to show, then it's a perfect option, but not when you got animations included. So I'm gonna exclude these. I don't want a new UV map, and I don't want the bake objects into a new scene. So I exclude those. I do not want lighting. I exclude those as well. And then I got my 4 options. I got my setting or my destination defined, so that's fine. And I got the OpenGL plus Y, and that's typically for Unity. If you're exporting out to Unreal, you want to use the DirectX one. So OpenGL is there. I'm clicking on OK, and everything is now processing. As you can see, it's got 4 images being processed, being the diffuse one, the metallic one, the roughness one, and the normal one. And this one is finished. So let's just take a look what the program has done, and I can show you this part of it. And let me just zoom in. So I got 4 maps, which is obviously the color one. You got the normal one, which is the purple. I got the metallic one, shows you the glossy parts and which are not, and the roughness. And those I can use to import in the next program. So I'm back at the Blender file. I'm gonna select the entire model. So I got all the objects selected. I'm heading over to File, and I'm going to choose the option Export, and I'm going to choose the option FBX. Then I got the directory where everything is stored, and there is a couple of options on the right hand side that we can use. We can limit everything to the selected objects. If you did by accident select everything, you're gonna find the camera and all hidden objects in your Unity scene as well. That's not something that you need, but we made the correct selection, so I don't need this. Just to make sure, I'm gonna select the armature and the mesh because I don't want the camera and the lamp. I didn't select it, but I still want to be sure. So just the armature, just the mesh. And we go down, apply the units, and I got the Y is up, and I want the animation to be baked. So I got the name down here. This is a weird name, but this is for the tutorial. Let me just say this is fine. And then press on Export FBX, and the model is generated. Show you what it looks like in this case, and let me just zoom in. I got my model in place, and I also got my FBX file in place. It's smaller, and this is the one I'm going to use in Unity. So let's take a look what it looks like and how this works, and we can still optimize one thing, so let's look at that. I just started up Unity as a reference. We'll dive in deeper at a later tutorial, but I just want to show you how this works. So I created a directory and let me grab the FBX file that we created. You can drag and drop or you can import. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like with the drag and drop option. I got the file selected. I'm just dragging this in. And if I move this away, you see that the model has been added. If I open this up, you can see all the individual parts are here. You can see that the animation is here as well. And we'll look at that at a later tutorial, how to activate this. That looks fine. The only thing that is not so nice is that all the native materials are present in this import as well. And that's a bit clumsy, I guess. It's not as nice, so we can change that with the export and delete all the materials. But first things first, let's just drop the model into the scene. And if I take a look, so that seems to work fine. And I can move this around. But it's all shiny and silver, and I want to get the same materials in place as I had in Blender. So I'm just gonna drag and drop the materials in. So opening up the same file that we had. I selected all 4 of them and also drag and drop them right into the hierarchy, and there they are. How does that work? Let us check. So I got the part selected. I'm going to assets, I'm going to create, and I'm going to create a new material. For the moment, let's just call it new material. And I got some slots on the right hand side. I'm going to drag these different textures in there. So this is the first one. I can do the metallic one. I can, and actually I need to change this to a normal map. And it's going to give me a warning, but I'll say okay to it. And there we go. Yes, there they are. And I'm going to drag this one in the normal map. And I got the roughness going in the, let me change this to Autodesk. Apparently I changed it. And this is the one, and I didn't apply the material yet. And there we are. So let me just zoom in with the mouse button here, and as you can see, we got the material that we created in Blender right here in Unity with all the bumps and the glossiness and so on. Everything is here, so that seems to work fine. So we can create all the different texture maps and then we can apply them in Unity so we get the same textures as we created. The only thing that is not so nice at the moment is this aspect. And you can cover this up if you like with a rough material, but since we are using a shiny one, it's very pronounced and then something we do not want. And this had to do with the topology of the model. I'll address this issue in a separate tutorial, as it should not be part of the conversion of an engineering model to a 3D model, but I'll address the issue anyways. So that all seems to work fine. Let's get back to Blender and then solve the issue with the different materials just to get a cleaner import into Unity. We are back in Blender where we are going to create a clean export. So if you look at the model, and just as a quick reference, you can see that the material that we just created is present. And we can head over to the materials tab and we can just click on the minus sign and then the material is gone. That also works for the other ones. Just simply clicking on minus, and it only applies as I have not baked those out. And let me just delete all those. That's quite simple. For this tutorial, I did make a bake of the bottom one. So if I were to delete it, you can see it's still there, and it has to do with the add-on. So if you scroll down, you can see it has a bake part in the hierarchy. But if I were to delete this and the entire bake, I can head over to the materials tab. There we are. And then we can delete it as well. So we got the bake gone and the native Blender part is also gone. Now I can select all the parts I want to export. I like to select them. So I got everything selected that I need. Make sure I exclude the lamp and the camera. They should not be part of the export. Heading over to File, heading over to Export, heading over to FBX. Then I'm going to create a clean one. I got one already, but let me overwrite this. And just for the sake of having a clean export, I'm going to select armature and mesh. Then I'm going to press export. And that should be the clean export from Blender. Let's take a look at Unity. Looking at the model, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, as you can see, the clean model I just created, drag and drop this inside of Unity. And as you look at the import right now, we still have the animation here, that is fine. And we got all the different and separate objects here without all the materials cluttering up the import. So we got the export in place. We are ready for the Unity part of it. So with the export being correct, we can head over to Unity to start the next part of the tutorial series. I guess this is it for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one.